The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com.
Welcome to the bonus show. I previewed this yesterday, and I want to restate it today because now we do have this new advertiser, Wunder Capital, and it's Wunder with a U, W-U-N-D-E-R. They are doing a trial run on 2 episodes of the show. One is today, June 1st, and another is, I believe it's next week, or actually more likely in 2 weeks. And the idea is to sort of gauge whether what they offer is a good fit for the David Pakman Show audience. And so real quick, you can find out more about what they do online. It's an investment platform specifically for investing in solar energy around the United States. So you can sort of, if you understand the audience of this program and our position on alternative energy and fossil fuels, it's easy to understand why there's potential here for this to be a really great fit and a long-term advertiser for the show. In order for them to gauge whether it is a good fit, they are doing 2 things basically to measure. One is how many people from our show ultimately become solar energy investors through their platform. But subsequent to that, because that's not something everybody's going to be ready for after hearing one ad, is how many people go to their website and create an account through the link wundercapital.com/Pakman, which is, of course, WUNDER capital.com/PAKMAN. So at minimum, I would love it if you went to wundercapital.com/Pakman and create an account for free, and that will give you access to the platform to figure out the different ways in which you can invest in solar power, solar energy around the United States, even if you don't ultimately invest, because all traffic that we drive to wundercapital.com/Pakman is going to be, for them, indicative of the level of interest that exists among our audience. And I've been super clear, like, listen, you know, not everybody's ready to just invest money when they hear one ad. So I think that the long-term impact of you advertising with us would be much, much stronger than the sum of its parts, so to speak, of advertising one day this week and one day in 2 weeks. Regardless, though, if they can get traffic and signups, I think it will be a really, really good thing. And I'm really interested in bringing them on as a long-term advertiser. So again, all I'm asking is that you go to wundercapital.com/Pakman. It's WUNDER capital.com/Pakman. Create a free account, look around, and that's that. That's basically where we are with that. A U.S. Air Force veteran is getting 35 years in prison for trying to join ISIS. This is an Air Force veteran who has been convicted and sentenced yesterday to 35 years in prison. His name is Tyrod Pugh, 49 years old, from New Jersey, found guilty last year on federal charges of trying to give material support to ISIS and of obstruction of justice, according to the U.S. Justice Department indictment. And of course, there was all sorts of nationalistic-esque rhetoric during the trial. The defendant turned his back on their country, turned his back on the military that he once served, et cetera, et cetera. Really all true, right? I mean, this does appear with this individual to be what this individual was trying to do. What's interesting about this, Pat, is we've talked a lot on the domestic terrorism front about how so-called patriot groups, militia groups, these sovereign citizen movements and white supremacist groups, they specifically go after former members of the military. And we've had former KKK people on the program, like Scott Shepard, for example, or Frank Mink, and they've explained, oh yeah, these groups know that it's a really good idea to go after former military. You wouldn't expect, I guess, as much to see it with ISIS. But again, extremism is extremism in different flavors.
Yeah, and this guy served in the military from 1986 to 1990. So, of course, there's been plenty of time for him to rethink what he's dedicated to. And if it was fighting for his own country 20 years ago, maybe it's for a different cause now. I mean, that's plenty of time to change your mind. Of course, you said you typically find it amongst right-wing terror groups. Timothy McVeigh comes to mind. I mean, he served in the Persian Gulf War, honorably discharged, and then ended up committing the Oklahoma City bombing, killing 168 people in vengeance for Waco.
If you believe that, of course, many conspiracy theories around that entire thing. I think that those are crazy, obviously, but just it's always good to remember that there are people who still don't believe the story that we sort of know to be true, even about that. And that's been, what, at this point, 24 years?
Well, 1996, I think.
Oh, 96.
So that would
okay,
have to make
21
him a
years.
martyr for the cause too, because he was, convicted and
Yeah.
executed for it. So he would have had to been complacent to that all along.
Well, that's what makes it all much more credible, Pat. That's what you
Yeah,
need to
that's-
understand, the mind. Do you think part of this could relate to how we treat veterans when they come back from active duty? Because we've talked a lot about how it's the right that claims to, quote, support the troops. And what they usually mean by that is support the mission that the president decides the troops will be sent on. That, to me, doesn't mean support the troops. To me, that means health care, helping with jobs, etc.
I don't know if it's necessarily that. I just think that, because we have an all-volunteer army military at this point, the people who are encouraged to enlist tend to be, a lot more willing to fight for a cause. And now he says that he wanted to use his talents and skills to support ISIS.
Yeah.
So you can see how, he can use those abilities in a different way now.
Yeah, that part I totally do get, and of course the ideology is the part that is more raising of questions and concerns. But an interesting
Converted to
story.
Islam after leaving the military too.
Okay, that's interesting. Yeah, that's also interesting. Ireland. Ireland is an interesting country because on the one hand, it is on paper a very Catholic country, and one might assume that in all ways, as a result, Ireland is politically very, very conservative. And that's true in some ways, right? Like, for example, abortion in Ireland is illegal unless it's as a result of a medical intervention to save the life of the mother. That's very, very strict. Abortion by choice is basically against the law in Ireland. And that doesn't mean that there aren't so-called back alley abortions, which we know happen in countries where it is very difficult to have access to legal and safe abortions. But on that issue, Ireland is pretty conservative. On the other hand, same-sex marriage has been legal in Ireland going all the way back to November of 2015. And that is an area where if I say, hey, super Catholic country, you wouldn't immediately say, well, they must have legalized same-sex marriage, but Ireland did. But the latest news is that Ireland is about to elect a 38-year-old gay Asian doctor as its next prime minister. Some say that he's a sort of Emmanuel Macron, Justin Trudeau type. Others are saying, oh, this guy's a right-wing ideologue. So his identity is sort of, he's being elected not because of his identity, but despite it and because of his politics. But either way, when you look at Leo Varadkar, I'm not sure how it's pronounced, this would be a historic moment for the country of Ireland.
Well, it is interesting because you alluded to this. Ireland, in some respects, is a conservative country when it comes to social issues like abortion.
Yeah.
But they're more liberal when it comes to like the welfare state, for
Right.
example. And this politician, I forget his name.
Leo Varadkar.
Yeah,
Varadkar,
he's
I don't know.
described as socially liberal and economically conservative. So it's not the guy that you would expect to become the next prime minister of Ireland.
Yeah, and I think that sometimes in the U.S. it's harder for us. It's like when I talk to people about Argentinian politics, for example, and they say, oh, well, talk to me about the conservatives in Argentina. In Argentina, you have much stronger wings of the left. So like within my family, we had a call about, are there conservatives in your families? And I said, it's not that there's conservatives, but that doesn't mean that everybody's just on the same page. There are really significant divisions among different factions of the left. I think that that's also, when we look at Europe, sometimes harder for Americans who maybe don't follow world politics to understand, which is that it's not so clear-cut. Where in the U.S., you've got basically three types of conservatives. You've got your religious conservatives, which on social issues tend to be really, really conservative. You've got your more libertarian conservatives, which are about small government. And then you've got your low-tax, pro-business type conservatives, people more like a Mitt Romney type, who is not particularly ideological on social issues beyond the reality that they can probably raise money for campaigns by taking hardline positions on those issues. But there's so many other combinations when you look in Europe. You have a stronger democratic socialist component. You have people who are more neoliberal on economics, but are sort of libertarian or more left on social issues. And there's just way stronger representation for these different intermediate, I guess, groups.
Yeah, and that makes sense because whenever I speak to Europeans, they're always intrigued by just the fact that there's so much polarization in American politics.
Yeah.
Where you're either all the way on the left or all the way on the right. And I mean, it makes sense that it should be more nuanced in other countries because, let's say you support tax cuts. Why does that necessarily mean that you also are against abortion, as it seems to be like in our country, where you may have divisions between, authoritarian conservatives and libertarian conservatives, but by and large, those issues that you wouldn't think line up seem to line up.
Well, there's something in the U.S. that some right-wing ideologues have come up with, which links low taxes and being against abortion.
Really?
Well, in their minds. Okay, so if you follow the internal logic, the idea is, hey, if you earn money, the moral thing is you get to keep it. We're against taking from the rich to give to the poor because the poor haven't earned it, they don't deserve it. It's this strict father morality. Same thing with abortion. We can prevent abortion by increasing access to contraception, but that's too easy. You need to suffer the consequences of having sex because you deserve to get pregnant and not be able to terminate the pregnancy. It's that ideology that links them together. I think it's totally harebrained.
I see what you're saying, but you can also just take the contraception issue out of the equation altogether. Tabling that, bracketing that conversation aside, they may be against abortion just out of a morality sense, not even a financial one.
Absolutely. It could be just that it's a religious thing when it comes to being against abortion. It doesn't necessarily correlate in that way for being for low taxes or whatever the case may be. But you can always find rationalizations for these seemingly unrelated and often incoherent positions that we see among the American right. But in any case, now you have Irish ancestry.
Yeah. I'm 18%, and I thought I was closer to half. But turns out there's a lot more British in there.
So are you much less interested in Irish politics since the DNA test revealed that you're not nearly as Irish as you thought you were?
No, because...
you were never interested to begin with.
No, my father married into an Irish family, Irish American, and they're very proud of it. There's an Irish flag hanging outside of my house.
Really?
We just had an Irish family visit from Ireland. So, I'm still involved in it. I don't have to be fully, and this guy by ancestry is half Indian, and yet he's going to become the next prime minister of Ireland. He's fully Irish.
And does your refusal of eating corned beef play a role in how the Irish side of your family perceives you due to veganism?
Even if they reject me, I'm not going to reject them. I'm not going to respond in kind. I'm above that.
But you do reject the corned beef.
Yeah.
Okay, of course.
Who accepts corned beef in this day and age?
Hey, I've been to one or another Jewish deli, and believe me, there's a lot of acceptance of corned beef there, as long as it's on marble rye with mustard. But that's a story for another day. So anyway, interesting what's going on in Ireland. We'll continue to follow it, and we'll also. I'm going to be interested to see what are the political issues that the incoming prime minister will really focus on. Will it be the more centrist or neoliberal economic issues? Will it be social liberalism? We will see.
Yeah, and I think that's an important thing to focus on. Obviously, they're doing it, but from an international perspective, it's more interesting that this guy is half Indian and gay and a doctor, and he's 38 years old. I mean, all of those things put together is probably one of the primary reasons we're focusing on it.
I agree, no doubt about it. All right, that's it for today. Talk to you on the Friday show.
The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com.